What is up, guys? Wrestling Premiere is here again with the new year video. Wow, it has been about 375 days, I think, since I last made a year video. It's a long time coming. I haven't done a year video in over a year. In that time, I've been contemplating, like, when should I do this? Because these videos are so damn hard to make. Why did I choose 2002? Well, it was the year of change. WWE was in an awkward situation where the ratings were starting to fall and wanted to counter by making entirely new stars. And it wasn't helping that The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin disappeared abruptly. The whole entire thing was dire and they had to retaliate fast. Now, will I do more of these? Yes. But don't expect them anytime soon, to be honest. I want to expand and do, like, say, WCW and ECW into the fold. Like, always wanted to do that as well. I want to call other content creators and ask them if they want to, like, contribute to these year videos. But yeah. Alright, with that said, let's get into it. Let's go back to the era of ruthless aggression. Okay, 2002. If you mention it to many, they'll think of different things. TNA, Ring of Honor, but for me, it's the WWE. The year in itself marks the beginning of a new era aptly entitled Ruthless Aggression. The boss himself, Mr. McMahon, wanted to see real competition from the brands, and it resulted in some great and not so great television. First of all, the most memorable thing, arguably, to have occurred in the year of 2002 was the name change. For some reason, well, many reasons, the WWF violated the terms of their agreement with the other WWF, you know, the Panda. But long story short, World Wrestling Federation took the WWF.com domain. WWF got angry, forcing WWF to change their name after they won in court. And so on May 5th, 2002, World Wrestling Federation became World Wrestling Entertainment. And no, it wasn't like they woke up one morning and thought, oh, we should become WWE like they say in that documentary. But anyways, around the same time period, WWE was undergoing a huge transformation. Since the roster became more bloated than Hulk Hogan's annual salary in WCW, they needed to split the roster into two. After the initial plan, that being WCW on Monday nights, which is insane to think about, and SmackDown, WWF SmackDown on Thursday, didn't come to fruition. And after the invasion, WWE decided to have SmackDown anchored by The Rock and Raw anchored by Stone Cold. They gave both brands something interesting to watch, and they were supposed to be treated as equals. And a draft was even held to decide where the talent was headed. The only people exempt from the draft were the tag team champions and the undisputed champion, and by the end of the year, Raw took the tag titles and SmackDown turned the undisputed championship into a brand exclusive title. The brand split in itself proved to be a massive success for up and coming stars, for mid-card talent that struggled to break through because of an all-time assembly group. In my personal opinion, I feel as if the brand split was a success due to the fact that so many stars were made, and had there never been two brands, I shudder to think what would have happened to the likes of Eddie Guerrero. Like, I don't know if he would have ascended to the top like he did if there wasn't that brand split. Alright, moving on from the topic of the brand split, I'd like to mention something that was probably the biggest blow to the WWE in 2002. That being the departures of Stone Cold and The Rock. In the original plans of the brand split, these two were clearly seen as the ones who would be the faces of their show. By the end of the year, however, neither man was even in the company, and I'd compare it to, say, if Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo played on the same team and left within 2 months of each other. Clearly, the team would struggle, and yes, I consider them to be the Messi and Ronaldo of WWE due to the fact that they came in at the same time and brought an unmatched level of star power. Austin's departure in particular, if you read back to the beginning of the year, you could see that it was boiling over, but when you look at it from a 2002 perspective, it's kind of unbelievable that the top guy, the biggest star in the company, left. Now, he had his reasons, of course. I mean, Austin was out there, he was having great matches, he was having great stories, and then they suddenly turned him face and just threw him aside for other guys. It just didn't make sense to have the top guy, the most popular guy on the entire roster, relegated to some mid-card feud with the NWO. Add to that, he faced Scott Hall at WrestleMania. Yes, he had his reasons to be angry, and he took his ball and went home. Then that domestic incident with Deborah occurred, and Austin kept a very, very, very low profile heading towards 2003. He eventually returned, but like I said, his departure was a huge blow. With regards to The Rock, this one is clear as day. You know, the guy, he was a rising star in Hollywood. He wasn't prioritizing wrestling over Hollywood, and I think it's a shame because at the time, like when you look at The Rock of 2002, he was a good in-ring performer. Like, I consider Rock of 2002 to be very good and probably at his best. You know, he was having amazing matches left and right, and the only year that I feel rivals it in terms of in-ring quality that The Rock had would be 2000. But yes, he left because of Hollywood. But before leaving, however, he put over a talent, unlike Stone Cold, and went on to film The Rundown. So yeah, Austin and Rock, they left abruptly within 2 months of each other, and it was crazy. But with the departure of both men, it forced WWE to make stars and make them quick. It also leads me to my next topic: faltering ratings. For a multitude of reasons, 2002 marked the year where WWE's ratings fell harder than the Nexus's push in 2010. You can say it was WCW's acquisition and subsequent invasion storyline as the cause. You can say TNN, and a bunch of things can be used for explanation, but WWE failed to fix this. It wasn't until 2005 when John Cena and Batista were established that everything was green, the ratings were slowly rising, and they eventually fell, but at the time there was optimism. With regards to odd storylines that stand the test of time in being insane, HLA deserves a mention. For a company that was looking to change its identity, WWE certainly failed to do that. In this case, the lesbian storyline seemed much more suited for 1998 rather than 2002, and it was a desperate act of drawing ratings, and that in itself caused great embarrassment for the company. TNN issued a very apologetic statement in light of what had occurred on Raw, and the amount of things people would do to draw ratings. Like, man. At the same time, WWE is going to have both Billy and Chuck get married in the middle of the ring. Glad was very supportive of this, and it turned out that both Billy and Chuck weren't gay. Glad got angry at WWE, and at the time they were heavily criticized for what they were booking on television. WWE was really wilding in September of 2002. Like, were they that desperate to draw ratings? I don't know. I just wanted to talk about it quick because this is a 2002 video and it's essential. Speaking of odd, what about Vince Russo? The original bro for a very short stint was actually on the creative team, and this was around June of 2002, where WWE was in a huge panic mode. I'll get into that later, but Russo's run in itself didn't last long. Why is that? Well, he wasn't liked backstage. A certain billion-dollar princess disliked Russo and his ideas. Add to that, Bruce Pritchard claims Russo didn't have any idea what was going on because he didn't even watch the shows. Hell, Russo himself confirmed this, and he didn't even know that Triple H and Jericho faced off at WrestleMania 18. The relationship clearly wasn't going to work, and after Vince Russo made his way back home, he received a call from McMahon asking him to be a creative consultant from home. He was offered 6 figures, and even then, Russo claims he declined. With regards to his storyline plans, an Invasion sequel was pitched, but Russo had made an enemy out of himself in the past, his departure in 99, and by July of 2002, Vince Russo was gone from WWE. Hell, a few weeks later, he signed with Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. The 2 weeks Vince Russo spent in WWE is considered by many to be a head-scratching decision. It just came so far out of the blue and nothing was accomplished with it because everybody hated him. Moving on from bro getting booted, let's talk about this Raw match. Now, if you're not familiar with this, let me explain. So back in the early 2000s, WWE had a show by the name of Tough Enough. It provided a very real and in-depth look into the struggles of making it to the big leagues. And it's not like you have to go through the indies or anything like that, but for a shortcut to the WWE, it was still hellacious. Jackie Gaeta, a contestant in Season 2, managed to win the entire thing after showing heart and dedication. Despite the injury she sustained, there was nothing stopping her from winning it. And that's all fine, but when it was time for her to debut, it was anything but good. She teamed up with Christopher Nowinski to face Bradshaw and Trish Stratus. Despite the fact that there was some experienced workers in there, the match felt awkward and very botchy. In defense of Jackie, she was thrown to the wolves. On live TV, I should know, this was only after training for about 2 months. Still, many consider this to be the worst match in Raw history from a technical standpoint. I just wanted to mention this because we're talking about the year. Speaking of worst, 2002 was also the year of the plane ride from hell. Talk about a PR nightmare. 2 collegiate athletes fought on the plane, bumped into the door. I don't know if it was going to break or anything like that, but I'm sure some were worried. There was public nudity, men getting intoxicated and embarrassing themselves, Goldust serenading his ex-wife, and the most shocking story of them all, Michael Hayes got his hair chopped off by JBL. This whole plane ride, I can't wait for that documentary on Vice, Dark Side of the Ring to come out. We really need to hear a bunch of the wrestlers' opinions and stories of that night. It's a must. If you want an in-depth look into the plane ride from hell, check out my video or 100 others on YouTube. Another weird thing to have come from 2002 WWE was the Al Wilson saga. This is more hilarious rather than terrible like other things, and let me explain. So Dawn Marie managed to date Tori's father. They get married and Tori's livid with this because Dawn was giving off a snake vibe or something. It led to some kissing and this ended SmackDown, by the way. Al Wilson ended up dying during the honeymoon because he got too excited, and it's something that if you've never seen before, well, I suggest you do because it sounds just so outlandish writing it. Just writing it for this video, it sounds so weird. And if you thought Al Wilson was bad, well, calling Katie Vick bad would be a sign of praise. This thing in itself was absolute trash TV. So Kane was #1 contender for the world title. Triple H, wanting to get the crowd to hate him, reveals that Kane killed his girlfriend after driving drunk. Triple H then effed a mannequin. They had a casket match, and just thinking if this guy wasn't so green, it wouldn't have happened. It was so bad that Triple H himself despised the whole mannequin thing. Then he considered this to be a horrendous story of epic proportions, and it was necrophilia for the entertainment of one man. From pure trash to pure botching, the WWE's version of NWO. Since WWE was struggling with, you guessed it, ratings, Mr. McMahon decided to finally bring in the New World Order. Kayfabe reasoning was that the WWF needed a lethal injection, a lethal dose of poison, and so basically the boss wanted to kill his own company because Ric Flair was a half owner as well. Okay. Upon the re-debut, they came in and were like every other heels. All that was different was the spray paint. Add to that, they weren't even a real threat like they were in 1996 and 97, and it wasn't helping that The Rock was doing cartwheels around them. Like when you ask me, hey, what do you think of when you hear WWE NWO? I think of The Rock telling Razor Ramon to shove that camera up his ass, the Diesel horn thing.
Big Daddy Cool, Diesel!
It was already ruined, and to make matters worse, Hulk Hogan turned face, and within 30 days of returning to the WWE, he was gone from the group. Big Show, X-Pac joined, and there were previous members, so that wasn't an issue. But then Booker T came in, and to top it all off, Shawn Michaels. Like, that feels illegal to even look at, let alone say. Booker T was buried hard by the team, but hey, at least he's saying, I'm just a Booker T. He stole the show in damn near every segment he's in. Sorry, Shawn. And I'll get into him later. The NWO of WWE was just upper mid-card guys who were too lazy to do anything kayfabe-wise. With HBK taking leadership, it was clearly leading somewhere, possibly a huge storyline with Triple H joining. But Nash tore his quad on July 8th, and McMahon realized, damn, did this suck badly, and ended the NWO on live TV. Like, that's how bad it was. He literally ended the group on television. The WWE's version of NWO was essentially bastardized. But hey, they certainly made cash from the shirts and still do to this day. Moving on, I'd like to mention the discontinuation of multiple titles on Raw. That being the European title, the Hardcore title, and of course the Intercontinental title. In the Euro titles case, it wasn't really that notable for a while. Matter of fact, since D'Lo Brown and Kurt Angle used to fight for it, and with Raw already having two other titles, it makes sense to end it or give it to SmackDown. They did the latter, and as for the Hardcore title, that thing was worth about as much as a piece of paper. Everybody and their mom won the title. Shawn Stasiak won the title 15 times, and the mother never held it when the camera's on. So Eric Bischoff had one final hardcore match for the title, that Tommy Dreamer managed to win. Because of this, he faced his ECW buddy RVD in a title unification match. Van Dam won, and so the title was deactivated. With regards to the Intercontinental Championship, though, that's odd. Like, this is the most baffling decision WWE made in 2002. It's one of. Like, the title had such a rich and prestige history to it, you know, Mr. Perfect, Randy Savage, Ricky Steamboat, Razor Ramon, Shawn Michaels, all those guys held the title. This rich history that the title has, yet they decide to end the lineage with Triple H. The decision in itself wasn't very good because, for one, it left the mid-carders with nothing to do for about 7 months. It wasn't until then that the WWE realized that Intercontinental title was actually a good thing. I think they wanted to make the world title seem bigger or something, but it left guys like Test and Jeff Hardy lost. Enough title talk, let's give a mention to Matt Cappotelli and Hardcore Holly. Alright, for teaching somebody a lesson, Hardcore Holly sure left a mark. Holly, of course, was this tough old school guy that was going to protect the business at all costs, or he felt like beating up a rookie. Either way, Matt Cappotelli took a beating that he didn't deserve during the Season 3 shooting of Tough Enough. Despite this, he took it like a champ and even shook Holly's hand afterwards. And one thing to note is that Matt did expect to get his ass beat like he did. Holly just brought him into the ring and bullied him straight up. It was a very controversial moment that got Holly some unnecessary heat, and this was after the fact that he broke his neck in a match with Brock Lesnar. To some, it's business, that's how it was, but to others, it paints Hardcore as this huge bully that was a mark for himself. Some even claim that Hardcore was about to get fired due to his actions. And on the topic of Tough Enough, that wasn't even the craziest thing that happened that season. A contestant by the name of Lisa had some sort of psychological breakdown and opted to quit the show, right? Later that night, she was discovered on the roof. I don't know what she was doing there, but they called her parents, which she claimed to have not recognized. If that wasn't bad enough, she escaped custody at LAX and even wanted to go back on the show, but her request was denied. So what did she do? She went down to OVW and claimed that they sent her, and if that wasn't insane enough, she visited a bunch of main roster shows and was even allowed to work with the entrance Pyro. She knew what to say and how to say, and there's also a rumor that she spoke directly to Mr. McMahon. But yeah, she went all out, and I don't know if it's narcissistic tendencies or whatever, but that certainly was a story worth mentioning. Hulk Hogan and The Rock left such a huge mark on March 17, 2002. They absolutely destroyed the house, built it again just to tear it up. The energy from that match rivals just about any in WWE history, but it also drained the crowd and led to Triple H and Y2J battling it out in a very dull match from a reaction standpoint. Other than that, the match was pretty good. You know, Triple H had to overcome the injury, the adversity, his ex-wife in order to hoist those titles. But regardless of the match being good, it remains a largely uneventful main event, and many, including myself, believe Hogan and Rock should have went on last. But hey, Y2J got to main event WrestleMania. Speaking about main event, a certain someone was adulated, loved, adored by the fans, yet never got to ascend above the level that he was at the time. That being Rob Van Dam. If you're looking at it from a future sense, like you're in the year of 2002, you probably thought this guy was going to break through. He had a unique aura and charisma to him, and the fans were magnetically attached. He never got to ascend to the very top and was pigeonholed to the mid-card / upper mid-card scene, but then again, there were some reports at the time stating that the wrestlers disliked Van Dam's style because he'd kicked them in the face for real. And to make matters worse, he crushed the game's larynx in the Elimination Chamber, but still, when you look at it, it's odd that WWE never capitalized on his popularity in some way or shape or form. We all know what he did 4 years later, but when you look at him in 2002, it's a huge missed opportunity. Like, this man, he was absolutely loved by like 99% of the crowd. Like, it's very rare to see somebody boo Rob Van Dam. He was that damn likable. One thing that I've realized throughout this Thunderdome era of wrestling is that I don't miss the what chant. My God, were they so annoying. Somebody debuts, tries to cut a promo, and they're swarmed with what chants. It's damn near impossible to overcome them if you're not a notable wrestler. 2001 and 2002, though, proved to be the absolute peak of the what chance, with Austin turning it into a phenomenon. The crowd was absolutely lively during his promos, you know, I'll have 2 beers, what? 3 beers, what? It was ridiculous, and as good as it may have been, the aftermath proved to be hellacious for wrestlers who lacked promo skills. However, I will say that The Undertaker had the best comeback to any what chant of all time. But yeah, the what chant in itself after Austin completely changed wrestling crowds for the bad. Speaking of bad, I can only say 2 words and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Scott freaking Steiner. The big bad booty daddy finally returned to the WWE after 2 years away from pro wrestling. The reception he got from the MSG crowd was ridiculous and showed that there was a great interest in Big Papa Pump, but it was all downhill from there. For one, he debuted as a babyface. Steiner's no BS, explosive, short-tempered character down in WCW was nowhere to be found in WWE, and another unfortunate thing was the fact that Steiner returned while being injured, and not only that, but he wasn't as good as he was in the past. Still though, Steiner's insane charisma and talents outside the ring should have been utilized the best. That in itself was a huge fail, and why bother signing Scott Steiner if they weren't going to have him do well? To me, Scott Steiner really should have been used better than he was. He really could have been a bit more notable than he was in WWE at the time. In September of 2002, the WWE decided to have 2 world titles. The WWE Championship was on SmackDown, and Raw, they got a classic belt renamed to the World Heavyweight Championship. Instead of having a whole tournament for it, Eric Bischoff and Kayfabe had such a hard-on for Triple H that he just handed him the title, making him the first ever champion. It's very head-scratching due to the fact that since WWE liked making things a lot interesting back then, a tournament with the likes of Jeff Hardy, Ric Flair, RVD, Booker T, and of course Triple H would have definitely been cool. On the other side of things, does it make sense in storyline? Yes, Eric Bischoff loves Triple H and he'd obviously give him the title. Despite all of that, the title ended up becoming arguably the most important in the company for the next 3 to 4 years, so there's that. Moving on from the world title, I'd like to mention one of the most reviled teams from 2002 WWE. The UnAmericans. Wow, the amount of heat these guys were receiving at the time is something that's damn impossible to get today. They had so much heat that the tag team was scrapped because of fears they had. Now, if you know, you know, but in post 9/11 America, there's a lot more patriotism and pride for the country, and having the faction tees burning the flag in New York City didn't seem like the best idea. It still led to Kane returning in superb fashion and destroying the faction to a tremendous crowd reception. But regardless, the guys, they were very scared, they were pissing themselves, and they split about a month later, and with good reason. I mean, if I was them, I would have slept with one eye open. William Regal was the only man not afraid of that heat, and the rest was the 80s. That's the kind of heat they would kill for. The team could have gone on to be a huge heat magnet, but like I said, there were fears within it, and the only guy who wasn't scared was William Regal. They appreciated that kind of heat. You know, this is all I could think of that was either A, negative or just there. Before we move on to the good and very great stuff, I'd like to say what I thought was the worst pay-per-view 2002. That crown goes to King of the Ring. Why? Now, I would give it to Insurrection, but that's just too easy. The reason why I give it to King of the Ring is because the other pay-per-views were so damn good and completely overshadowed the event. Not only that, but other than the opener, there wasn't anything must-watch on the show. It was filled with decent to very disappointing matches, with the worst of them all being the main event. The Undertaker was injured, Triple H was injured as well, and it didn't click at all. The most exciting part was when The Rock randomly ran in and attacked The Undertaker. And that's my pick. That's my pick for the worst pay-per-view of 2002. I want to know what's yours. Worst feud? This is hard. Yeah, right. It's Kane versus Triple H. I don't need to explain this one. You guys know why. Okay, enough of the negative stuff from 2002. Let's finally talk about the good. First up, the debut of Eric Bischoff. To be honest, Eric Bischoff's WWE debut might be the most shocking thing to have occurred in 2002. This is the same man who was bad-mouthing WWF on a weekly basis, spoiled their results, beat them for 83 straight weeks, and it didn't matter who WWF got from WCW. And the signing of Eric Bischoff is more shocking than all. Booker T's reaction was the same as everybody watching the show that night. Unbelievable, and if that wasn't jaw-dropping, the hug that shocked the world certainly was. That moment in itself will forever live in the annals of WWE history as a moment nobody imagined would happen. Bischoff as a Raw GM added a whole lot to the show. His cunningness, hatred of babyface men and women, sucking up to Triple H and co made Raw that much more entertaining. Only that, but Bischoff's decision-making kayfabe-wise led to the creation of the Raw Roulette and the Elimination Chamber. I don't care what anyone says, if Eric Bischoff isn't number one on the greatest GMs list, he's certainly second. His signing also added a lot to the brand warfare storyline that WWE was pushing, as in the early days of the brand split, there was a lot of competition from both Stephanie and Bischoff in trying to sign the best wrestlers and overall putting on the best product. They were both very deceitful in their tactics. You know, Stephanie was promoting SmackDown during Raw, Bischoff was signing talent from under her, and they were really pushing the envelope and trying to make their show the A show, and sometimes it led to bad television, sometimes it led to good stuff. Whenever those two were in the same room, you could feel the tension there, and I always love going back to those Eric Bischoff Raw episodes, as he's one of the guys who contributed positively to the show. You know, he's a great on-screen authority figure. Moving on, let's talk about the new guys on the block. So WWE at this point had their backs against the wall. They had to make a new generation of talent, and quick. They got to do it quickly because Austin and Rock were gone. So they brought in talent that still to this day are making an impact on Monday and Friday nights. The likes of Brock Lesnar, who was a two-time NCAA Division I All-American. Shelton Benjamin, two-time All-American as well. Randy Orton, second-generation star with loads of potential. John Cena, the prototype who Jim Ross claimed would main event WrestleMania within 5 years. Batista, a green but very menacing powerhouse. And of course, Rey Mysterio, who was one of, if not the most revolutionary wrestlers from the 90s. These men, for the most part, would go on to have Hall of Fame careers, winning over 40 world championships in total. And this might be the biggest positive to come from 2002 because, like I said, WWE was getting desperate and they managed to turn these rookies into huge draws. Rey Mysterio's the most popular masked wrestler to this day. Batista increased Raw's ratings in 2005 after a few weak years. John Cena sold millions and millions and millions of merch, contributed to Raw ratings in 2005 as well. Randy Orton helped to give Raw its highest ratings since 2002 with the Viper character. Brock Lesnar makes every match he's in feel much bigger than anything on the card, and if I could compare the 2002 class to anything, it's definitely the 2003 NBA draft. The debuting class made their mark unlike any other. Like, it's rare to see so much talent emerge within 2 to 3 months like they did in 2002. 2002 didn't just mark debuts, it was also the year that saw the resurgence of the Big Show. Big Show kicking off the year was a glorified jobber. Like, he had fallen really hard. And after Paul Heyman got his hands on him, literally the month he got his hands on him, he made him WWE champion. The whole thing made Big Show relevant again and he was sort of scary again. I give this a positive because the booking that Paul Heyman gave him brought him back to the top. It gave him notoriety, and sure, the title reign is forgettable as just about anything, but like I said, Big Show's notable again. You could take him seriously. Another return that I really love from 2002 WWE is, of course, Eddie Guerrero's. I talked about his run here, but long story short, I love this run because Eddie came in with a chip on his shoulder. It was like he owed it to himself to excel as a talent. The fire in his promos and matches were something else, and people's mullet Eddie was really built different. He was a very integral part of the SmackDown 6, capturing the tag team titles with his nephew Chavo. The momentum he started building during this run led to him being uber over with the fans a year later, and of course it led to that WWE Championship win in 2004. From an excellent return to a shocking return, I'd like to mention Hulk Hogan. As you may know, Hogan embarked on this nostalgia run that ironically was the same thing WWE trashed years earlier. You know, WWE has old guys, we have the new generation, but that's not the point. Hogan turned grown adults into children once again by ditching the black and white in favor of the red and yellow. Hogan was so popular that he became, at the time, the oldest WWF champion, and ironically the final WWF champion as well. The pops he was getting was something current wrestlers can't even dream of getting. It was ridiculous, and the best thing to come from this run was his selflessness. Like, I don't think we've ever seen a time where Hogan lost as much as he did in 2002. First of all, he took the L to Rock clean. Triple H, he lost to him clean. The Undertaker, dirty finish, of course. Kurt Angle made him tap out. That's the most shocking of them all. This is like having John Cena tap out to Roman Reigns. And of course, there's the Brock Lesnar match. Some say this was Hogan trying to show he's changed or something. There was also that tag team run with Edge that he couldn't believe happened. Like, this is the same man Edge idolized as a kid, and now he's holding championship gold with him. However, the L's he was taken were going to have to be paid in interest. Apparently, a match between Brock and Hogan was planned for Survivor Series. Of course, Hogan was going to look tougher, but he wasn't going to take that L. He, of course, wanted to win it, though. Booking disputes ensued, and Hulkster walks out of the company for all of 2 months. And I just think it's hilarious to think that Hulk Hogan wanted to beat Brock Lesnar in the year of 2002. Like, bro, your career's already set. You're down in history. Time for the new guys. You guys know that. I don't see why I mentioned it. From Hulk Hogan to The Undertaker. To me, the big evil character The Undertaker created at the tail end of 2001 was cool. He finally found his form again, he was having better matches, promos, and this was after some people were telling him to retire. Like, he didn't even reach his actual peak yet. That was in like 2006. Big Evil was this bully type that did whatever he saw fit. He wasn't really scared of fights, he was the one picking them actually. The Ric Flair feud was probably my favorite of his from 2002 because of the personal animosity. Ric Flair had doubts over his ability, but they managed to have a good match at WrestleMania. This title run of course featured that superb Jeff Hardy ladder match that made him look excellent in defeat, and Jarrett's quote, "Make yourself famous, kid," is stuck with me to this very day. There was some superb storytelling with Jeff refusing to stay down, and despite the fact that he beat on him after the match twice, Taker couldn't help but gain respect for that bastard. And after that, he was back to being the babyface we all know and love. Unlike 2000 and 2001, Undertaker had a much better collection of matches and stories, and obviously there's some blunders, but that's expected because for some reason, the Brothers of Destruction always get booked in questionable stories. Like I said, 2002 marked the resurgence of The Undertaker. It was way better than previously, and 2002 was also the year where many perceived Kurt Angle as an all-time great. This is the time period where the man had it figured out. Like, I think up to this point, 2002 was the year with the best collection of matches for himself. Not only that, but he was involved in what many consider the best match of 2002, a top 5 triple threat match, and from an in-ring standpoint, you can't tell me anybody who had a better year than Kurt Angle. From the Edge matches to his storyline with Rey Mysterio, he was superb in everything. Especially after he lost his hair. It's like that was the one minor thing keeping him back from reaching his full form or something. 2002 Kurt Angle is certainly an all-timer, but then again, you can say the same for 2005 or even 2007 Kurt Angle. I could go on and on and on about the awesomeness of Kurt Angle circa 2002, you know, the legend status that he carved in such a short time, but we got other things to talk about. I gotta stop myself from talking about Kurt Angle. From an all-time great to a very superb time for the women's division. After the invasion and after the brand split was created, the WWE actually woke up from the long nap and realized that they had a women's division. With the division being taken seriously now, it opened up the doors for the likes of Molly Holly. Gone was a superhero character, rather a stern, independent woman who quickly captured championship gold. Jazz was the tough, aggressive woman who at times was dominant. Lita, well, she wasn't there at the time because of an injury. Jacqueline was kind of there, but not really. Ivory as well. Trish Stratus was a gutsy, pretty girl. And Victoria, oh man, she was built different. WWE made her into this very dangerous stalker who was absolutely unpredictable. With this wide array of talent, the Raw Women's Division managed to flourish and become a very entertaining part of Monday nights. My personal favorite feud, of course, was the Trish Stratus and Victoria thing, because it went a whole other direction compared to the women's feuds fans were accustomed to at the time. 2002 was also the year where Stratus slowly came into her own, and by 2003 she was one of the more skilled women. But the MVP from the women's side, in my opinion, has to be Victoria. She just came out of nowhere and had an excellent feud with Trish Stratus that resulted in her winning the title, and she was just an amazing character. That's my pick. What's yours? Another division that experienced success was the Cruiserweights. After a shaky invasion, the WWE opted to feature the Cruiserweights on SmackDown. I always seen 2002 to 2004's version of the division as WWE's best. You know, you had outrageous characters like the Hurricane and Jamie Noble, excellent at short matches on pay-per-view, but unfortunately, though, the division literally featured 3 men, that's all. It took a while for the division to develop and showcase other talent like Rey Mysterio, but for the time being, in 2002, it was pretty entertaining for what it was, you know? There wasn't that many guys in the division. That was the big problem. But yeah, Jamie Noble, Billy Kidman, they always had good matches on pay-per-view. Now, this is the one I've been waiting to talk about. I'd like to talk about a tag team that seemed doomed, but ended up working out very well, and I mean very well. That being the tag team of Booker T and Goldust. Goldust was this very unusually awkward individual, and Booker, well, he didn't want to be near Goldust at all. Soon enough, he began stalking him, and this leads to a bunch of super entertaining segments. Like that segment with The Rock. They were completely opposites, and the amount of charisma and electricity those two brought could light up a city. I wouldn't say Booker and Goldust tag team was a positive of 2002. I'll say it was one of the best damn things, and I owe it to them to make an entire video on that run. It's for sure one of the best things, and if you've never watched any of their segments, what the hell are you waiting for? On the other side, on SmackDown, there was an entirely new gimmick that quickly caught storm. Matt Hardy version 1, the Sensei of Mattitude. For the first time ever, Matt was actually more relevant and notable than his brother. The gimmick in itself is essentially a time capsule back to the internet in the early 2000s. You know, Matt would randomly utter some internet terms. His entrance would begin with a login. There's an old ass loading screen, and boom, Matt fact on the bottom left corner, such as Matt Hardy played GTA Vice City last night. He enjoyed it. Matt Hardy didn't like Linkin Park's new Meteora album. These are random examples, and as for the real ones, my personal favorite is Matt likes pulp in his orange juice. It was a very entertaining gimmick, and it was a nice change of pace for Matt, who was always considered the other Hardy. Add to that, he ended up winning championship gold, and if you're interested, here's an entire video I made on his run. Moving on from V1, let's talk about Triple H's superb return in January 2002. You guys already know that by the end of the year, Triple H was one of the most reviled and despised wrestlers to have competed in that year, but in the beginning, it was the complete and utter opposite. After being out for tearing his quad, the WWF fans were in anticipation for any sights of the game. They played those YouTube Beautiful Day vignettes, and even though this was the same man who ran over Austin, the same man who destroyed the McMahon family, he did all kinds of vile things, the fans couldn't wait for him, and it made for a very legendary moment in MSG. The pop that the game received was deafening, and it's very unlikely we'll see something like it again. It's a moment which even brought the game himself to tears. Like, that's how much that moment meant to him. We can talk about the beginning of the Reign of Terror occurring this year, Katie Vick, but at the end of the day, it won't take anything away from January 7th, 2002. With that said, one minor detail about 2002 that I really loved is the identity of the shows. For good and for bad, SmackDown and Raw are very different. You can feel a very different vibe from both shows. You know, Raw on Mondays was more about the segments and the shocking moments, whereas SmackDown was a bit more grounded and had much better wrestling to it. There was obviously some Raw-ish segments there, Raw-ish storylines like the Tori Wilson and Dawn Marie thing, but overall as a show, I prefer SmackDown. Obviously, there's going to be others that prefer Raw. There's not many of them, but I hear about them. But regardless, they treated their brands like real TV shows and tried to separate them. There was different booking teams, different divisions, everything, and it did remain like that for years to follow, but the brand split was never enforced as seriously like it was in 2002. Which leads me to my next point, the pay-per-views. Wow. After the brand split officially began, the pay-per-views were suddenly so good. Like, other than King of the Ring, every pay-per-view delivered, and I go as far as to say that every event from Vengeance in 2002 to WrestleMania 19 was good to great. There was 4-star matches, excellent stories told throughout 3 hours, and what about the theme songs? Like, the theme songs, the rock / new metal songs that dominated at the time. And if you listen to one, you're going to listen to a bunch of them. With regards to the best pay-per-view, in my opinion, it goes to SummerSlam. I don't even need to explain why, but I want to know what's yours. Another thing 2002 is lauded for with good reason is the ridiculous star power. Like, WWE didn't need to have that many stars on this roster. At one point in time, they had Stone Cold, The Rock, Triple H, The Undertaker, Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Booker T, Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle. This was without the likes of Randy Orton, Rey Mysterio, Shawn Michaels, and Scott Steiner debuting / returning. 2003 technically was more stacked, but like I said, the roster was completely bloated, and it made the shows even more entertaining when looking back. Obviously, some of the stories were botched, but it's still nice to see that many talent under one company for a short moment. That roster had technical skill, charisma, promo skill, psychology, everything. And it made the games even better than they already were. With that said, I'd like to remind you guys of a very underrated return. That being the Dudleys at Survivor Series 2002. Now, it was very cool to see the team who were once separated and who were once battling each other reunite. Like, Bubba was on Raw getting this weird mini push that many believed ended when he botched that Triple H powerbomb, but he was doing well. Devon, though, he was doing nothing. Then again, he beat Triple H and John Cena within 3 months, so that's something. But when you look back at 2002 WWE, it just feels off to see these two separated. Like, they're meant to be together. And the match itself, you know, the tables match, 3-minute warning against the Dudleys and Jeff Hardy. It was very ridiculous in a good way. It was like a car crash match or something. The moment those two crossed paths, the fans went insane. JR marked out as well, and they went on to have one final run in WWE before disappearing from the company for 10 years. And then, of course, there's my favorite return of 2002, Shawn Michaels. So last time people saw HBK in a wrestling ring, he had an Austin 316 shirt shamefully covering him. His nagging back problem as well as other issues kept Michaels away from the squared circle. Despite this, he was making over $700K a year just to randomly strip off his clothes and say a few words every month. He seemed like a return was far away, but as time went on, it was becoming more possible. Now, one misconception people have was that HBK's back was injured for 4 years. It wasn't. It wasn't injured for that long. I believe he had surgery in 1999, and so he was kind of ready to go, but his other problems, you know, the drug-related and all that, and his attitude were keeping him away. And then WWE had him return in the NWO. Random, but who cares? Shawn Michaels is back on TV. Then the story that they were originally going to book gets scrapped, and the replacement ended up being even better. The story itself was Triple H, his best friend, turning on him, leading to this epic announcement from Michaels who says he'll make a full recovery by SummerSlam. They have this superb match of the night, and one of the very best from that year, and the belief was that HBK was done, you know? Turns out, he's got that itch that led to a full-time run that rivals his original one. HBK didn't need to come back and have classic matches like he did. His career was already in the books, but he did it anyways and ensured his spot as one of the all-time greats. Now, before I say what and who were the best things from 2002, you know, Wrestler of the Year, Rookie of the Year, all that, my opinion, of course, I gotta mention one of the greatest pro wrestling games that you and I played. SmackDown, Shut Your Mouth. This was the ultimate WWE game. Like, before this, there had never been a game featuring that much content to it. It's ridiculous, and unfortunately, since the game came before Here Comes the Pain, it gets overshadowed. It had everything, and I mean it. Alternate attires, a feature which WWE games lacked for about 12 years, And also, before this, there was 0 alternate attires. If you played with The Rock beforehand, you'd play with the same Rock who was wearing the same trunks. You wouldn't get to play with the track pants Rock. You never got the chance. It featured every pay-per-view arena from mid-2001 to mid-2002. The gameplay was much smoother than just Bring It. The graphics were way better, and I have so many memories of this game playing it on the PS2. I used to grind hard for the alternate attires in arenas and season mode, and don't even get me started on the storylines in that game. Like the NWO randoming the ambulance into you like in real life. The roster was so damn bloated. Match selection was unlike anything that had ever been seen before. I could go on and on about that game in a whole other video, just the memories I made from it. Wow. Overall, it excels in nearly every facet, but it unfortunately gets overshadowed. It destroyed just bringing in every area, no stone left unturned, except for crowdfunding and some 5-star Taz commentary. But yeah, Shut Your Mouth is one of the greatest wrestling games of all time. With that said, who is Rookie of the Year? Easy. Brock Lesnar. Why Brock? Well, for one, this freak of nature was 24 going on 25 when debuting, and immediately he received a push to the top so fast, it took him 5 months and 7 days, which is completely unheard of in this day and age, to win the title. Not only that, but he bested Hulk Hogan, The Rock, and The Undertaker within 2.5 months. You can't say anybody else, and even if you did, they don't come close to Lesnar's accomplishments. But yeah, he had such a monster year. By the end of it, he was heading towards a main event at WrestleMania 19. This was all within his first year. Now, who's the best promo? I think this goes to The Rock. He obviously wasn't there often, but regardless, he got the crowd laughing in it into every single one of his segments. Best tag team? Now, this one is a bit tricky because the major teams like the Hardys, APA, and Dudley's split in March. And it's a struggle to choose one team. You know, there was Christian / Y2J, Los Guerreros. You can go with Angle and Benoit, or even Edge and Ray, who are my personal favorites. It's really hard to choose who's the best because those 3 teams were connected to each other for the most part. So it wouldn't really make a difference. My favorite, like I said, was Ray and Edge, but I'm gonna go with Los Guerreros probably. It's very hard to choose one, and I'm pretty certain you guys will struggle as well. Best moment? Damn, there's a lot to choose. My favorite is either HBK kipping up at SummerSlam 2002, because that spot signified that the showstopper's back. Years of anguish and struggles were finally gone. Well, for 2 minutes because Triple H destroyed his back with a sledgehammer. But the best is probably the tense stare down between Rock and Hogan at WrestleMania 18. It was 2 generations colliding, and nobody imagined that the match would happen a year ago. Best segment, one of my personal favorites, is probably Kurt Angle on September 12, 2002. He completely embarrassed himself in this segment, like he was trying too hard to make himself look good, but he failed miserably. Kurt Angle circa 2002 was the best mix of wrestling, comedy, series, promo, but we can't talk about it. I told you guys earlier on, we can't be talking about Kurt Angle the entire time. The best segment is Ruthless Aggression, I think. It had a lasting effect on the shows as young guys came in trying to seize the moment. Best show? Well, most of us agree that it was SmackDown. It had superb wrestling, great characters and stories, and unlike Raw, it didn't have that one big cloud hanging over it. Like, whatever bad, terrible stuff SmackDown had, it certainly wasn't around the main event scene. Except for this, it was pretty unnecessary. Anyways, what's the best feud? Well, my favorite is Triple H and HBK. The intensity of the story, HBK returning and making a full-on comeback, I love it. The best is probably SmackDown 6. It's more of a tag team program, but the whole thing was something special. You know, every week a random combination of the 6 men would go out there and have a 4-star match. This continued throughout 2003. Sure, they weren't teaming up anymore, but the guys crossed paths on several occasions. Match of the year? My favorite is, of course, the triple threat main event from Vengeance. There was star power, there was action, memorable moments, it had it all, and best of all, there was a title change. But the best match is either the Chamber or the Unsanctioned match. Honorable mention goes to the Lesnar / Taker Hell in a Cell, and the tag title match from the same pay-per-view, which many consider to be the best match of 2002. And lastly, MVP. Well, who was the MVP of 2002 WWE? There are only 2 men you could say are worthy of MVP with the year they had. There's Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar. Why those 2? Well, Kurt Angle to me was the best damn in-ring performer of 2002. It was the total package, sorry Lex, the amount of great matches he had in the entire year far away eclipses anybody else. I lost count on how many funny promos he had as well, and Brock Lesnar on the other hand, his resume speaks for itself. WWE Champion, King of the Ring, he beat Hogan, Rock, and Taker, you know how it went. Other than that, there's of course the man himself, Devon, who beat both Triple H and John Cena. But for me, I'm going to have to go with Brock Lesnar because of the fact that he ascended so quickly. By the end of 2002, he's one of the top guys and was on his way to becoming a huge star. That's 2002. Overall, it had its ups and downs, but what is remembered is mostly the good. Rey Mysterio, Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Randy Orton, Edge's push, the new wave of talent that dominated WWE in the late 2000s. That's what's remembered best from it. Obviously, there was some stupid stuff, but for the most part, there were some very good things to come out of the year. So yeah. What do you guys think of 2002 WWE? Please comment down below. And that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the angle slam on the like button and perhaps the F5 on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.